So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My words of Torah are very simple tonight. I have a question for you. How long or how far do you have to travel to realize that you've changed? Think about that for just a moment. Raise your hand if you have been to Boulder, Colorado. Okay? So some of you have been to the Flatiron Mountains and have gone hiking in the Flatiron Mountains. I was fortunate enough to go about 6 or 7 years ago on an expedition with the adventure rabbi, Rabbi Jamie Korngold. It's pretty awesome that there is an adventure rabbi, and she decided rather than sitting in a sanctuary, it would be more fun to take people hiking and skiing and adventuring for Shabbat and Bar Bat Mitzvah. She even does Pesach in the Moab Desert with a whole camping trip, and it's rather incredible experience. And my dad decided that it was time that he and I had a proper father and son rabbi bonding trip, and so he invited me to go with him on the adventure rabbi program, which was great, until he decided that he couldn't go 2 days before. So I went with his assistant rabbi, who's now his senior rabbi, and we had a great time. And we hiked in the Flatiron Mountains. So someone who's been there, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's mountains, it's trails, it's woods, yes? But it's not like the 14,000 foot high Rocky Mountains, okay? It's just in the, they call them foothills in Colorado, not exactly what we have here in Florida. And so there I am, I arrived, don't worry, I had my backpack. It was a perfect backpack, complete with the water bladder and the hiking shoes and the hiking stick. I was all set up to go. And there we went off. And what we did was we would hike. We went to a spot and we gathered there. It was we had just started out. She wanted to make sure that we weren't going to fall over off the trail. We didn't. And we got to our first clearing and she stops us and she says, everyone sit down. And then we proceeded to introduce ourselves. And we went around the circle and we explained our name, you know, how long, when we were ordained, where we were coming from, why we were on this trip. And we went around the circle. It was really pretty amazing. It was a really incredible group of folks. And we went off and continued hiking. And we went from spot to spot, and we would hike for a few hours, and then we would stop and visit for a little bit, and do an activity while we were in the midst of hiking. We would go from spot to spot, we would hike, and do not worry, we were not sleeping in tents. We went back to a nice air-conditioned lodge with beds and indoor plumbing. It wasn't that much of an adventure. And so we did this over the course of 2 or 3 days. We would get up in the morning, we would pack our bags, we would take our snacks, and we would go out hiking, and we would hike along, we would stop in a clearing, we'd have a conversation with each other, we would visit with each other, we would learn from each other and with each other, and then we would continue on our way. And we did this over the course of 3 days. And then we got to as we were coming to the end, we stopped in a clearing, just like we had been doing for over the course of that time, and she sits us down and she says, do you recognize where you are? And we're like, we're in Colorado. She said, no, don't you recognize this spot? We said, it's the mountains, the Flatiron Mountains. We're in Boulder. And she says, no, don't you recognize this spot? You were sitting there, you were sitting there, you were sitting there, and you said this, this, and this. And we're all looking at her like, what are you talking about? Where were we? Back in the original clearing where we had been. The reason I didn't recognize it is I wasn't the same person. In the course of those 3 days, I had gotten to know all of the people I was hiking with. When I set out, I knew 1 or 2 of them, but not very well. And over the course of the 3 days, as we visited with each other, as we learned with each other and from each other, we developed relationships. We became friends with each other. So by the time we got back, it might have been the same physical spot, But 3 days later, we were all very different people, and so we did not recognize the place because we weren't the same people who had sat there 3 days before. We all have those moments. And Chris, as you are sitting there with Alex and Lily sitting with you, think back to that moment when they were born and think about how much life has changed. As you are getting with your oldest child about to become bat mitzvah, an adult, think about this moment. Because in short order, there will be other benot mitzvah before you know it. And by the time Lily has her bat mitzvah, think about this for a moment, Alex will be driving. It happens that fast. It is really incredible when we stop to think about time and space, when we stop in moments like this to look around and think about who we are, where we've been, who we are with. And then a little while later, after some time has passed, we think about what that journey is, what that experience is, how we've changed, what has happened to us. What do we call these moments in Judaism? We call them Shehecheyanu moments. Moments when we stop and we say the Shehecheyanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehecheyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space. You have given us life, you have sustained us, and brought us to these incredible moments. And so for the Shackletons, this is one of those moments to mark that time and space. But I said to you, think about how long it takes you to realize you've changed, but then also, pardon me, when you think back and look at a period of time to realize how much you've changed over that period of time. I say this because we are in the midst of a counting of time. We are in the midst of something called the counting of the Omer. Raise your hand if you have heard of the counting of the Omer. It is really pretty extraordinary. This is a time of counting where we count from the Exodus from Egypt to the 50 days until our ancestors arrived at Mount Sinai. That we count from the 50 days from the beginning of the barley harvest to the beginning of the wheat harvest in the land of Israel. Today, does anyone know what day of the Omer it is? Today is the 11th day of the Omer. And so my religious school students, how many weeks and days is that in the Omer? Think 11, subtract 7. Quinn? You're going to say 4 days. We are 1 week and 4 days into the Omer. And I was just thinking about it as I was standing here because the second night of Passover is the first night of the Omer. And that was a couple of days before I scratched my cornea. And I've now been through this whole process with my cornea. It's getting better. On that night, after the Seder, we went home and we talked to our oldest child who was still in India, and they were asking us, wait, has Passover started yet? Because they didn't know what day or time it was because it's India and it's 11 hours ahead of us. And here we are 11 days into the Omer and Ren is already home. And by the time we get to 2 weeks into the Omer, Ren will be back here in Florida and we'll get a chance to visit with them. In the course of that 2 weeks, how much time has changed? Here, in this moment, you will be celebrating with Alex as she becomes bat mitzvah. By the end of the Omer, you all will be out of school. You will already be on to your summer vacation, and you will be looking back at this time saying, do you remember when we were all celebrating together? And so I offer you this time of Omer to think about that spiral of time. Here you all are gathered for this moment of Simcha for your family. Here we are all gathered for this moment of Shabbat. And as I say Simcha, I know that there's also folks who are here for Suris. We're saying goodbye to someone they love, and that's one of these moments too. That sometimes it's acknowledging the passing of time with sweetness, and it's acknowledging the passage of time as we face challenge. It's both and. And so tonight, here on this 11th night of the Omer, we count this time. We remember this day. We mark this day. And I ask for you to be thoughtful and sensitive. Over these 7 weeks, there are about 5.5 weeks of the Omer left, to think about the count, to tune in when you might hear the count, to look it up on Google and see what day of the count it is, but to think about who you are here in this moment, who you are with in this moment, Basman Hazeh, and as this time goes forward until we reach Mount Sinai, until we reach Shavuot, till we reach that time of the next phase of sweetness of our tradition, to think about how you grow, how you change, what has moved you, and where you have moved our world. I invite you to join together with me with this ritual of the counting of the Omer. We read together. I am now prepared to fulfill the positive mitzvah of the counting of the Omer, as is written in the Torah. And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of the wave offering, the day after the day of rest, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. Until the day after the 7th week, you should count 50 days. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishadu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us through mitzvot and commands us to count the Omer. And then we declare together, tonight is 11th night of the Omer, which is 1 week and 4 days into the Omer. And may this time be fruitful for us as it is for our ancestors. As our ancestors enjoyed the bounty of the land of Israel, may each of us find that bounty and blessing in our days. Amen.